Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I am just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, we'll be talking with Naomi Yano about her personal relationship journey, non-conventional and non-categorical relationships, as well as her work as an emotionally focused therapist, a type of therapy that has helped individuals and couples bring profound healing into their lives and relationships. So here's a little bit about Naomi. She's a registered psychotherapist and clinical supervisor in private practice in the Toronto area. She's certified emotionally focused therapist and an emotionally focused therapist supervisor candidate. She has a Master of Science in Couple and Family Therapy. She works with adults, couples, and individuals with a focus on anything to do with relationships, including attachment styles, repetitive patterns, and infidelity. She's also an author, interviewed at the Toronto International Festival of Authors in 2021, and is currently writing about her own trauma recovery from the perspective of client experience and therapist expertise. It's a memoir self-help book, and there's a short ebook that's currently on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. She's also the founder of Emotional ICU, providing free resources to empower people to understand what's happening in their brains and bodies so that they can make sense of their experience and recognize what they need to cope and heal. And finally, because we're not all just about our work, she's a mother to a wonderful teenager. She enjoys hiking, loves flowers, and finds joy in Latin dancing. She wants to keep on growing in compassionate awareness of self, other living beings, and the planet, and help others to do the same. So let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode with Naomi Yano. Thank you so much for being here, Naomi. I am so excited to be here sharing this space with you. And tell everyone a little bit about yourself, how you came to what you call non-conventional, non-categorical relationships, and how, this is a part of that idea of relationship diversity.
Yes, I am in a place, I guess, in a journey, really, that is ongoing. But the way it has unfolded is that in my own experience, in my own life experiences, and in my professional job as a therapist, I have learned so many things which have influenced, I think, how I make decisions in life in general, and how that applies more specifically to my relationships, which kind of results in this possibility for diversity. So perhaps I'll just kind of rewind with where this all kind of began. And I guess as far as relationships, I did not date a whole lot in my teens and 20s. And I got married. I mean, by today's standards, I guess it would be kind of early 25. I'm not sure. But anyway, I got married after a little dating experience with somebody who was, somewhat compatible. There were good moments and connection and so forth. But I think a large part of what drove both of us were, our traditional values about, what you're supposed to do, and kind of doing the thing, right? You get married, you get a house, you have kids, all that sort of thing, without really questioning if that was something we wanted or not. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to want those things, but I just didn't ask myself if that's actually what I wanted. So I went along with it and I did it. And I think in the course of that relationship, I didn't really question or pay attention to what I liked or what I didn't like, or, how I felt about things, and just kind of went with the flow. And part of that flow was buying into that, maybe things, if they didn't feel good in the relationship, they were my fault. And I was doing something wrong. And it wasn't looking the way it should because of me. And actually, eventually, he, my partner, then he had an affair, and he did leave to go be with that partner. He's not with them anymore. And we got divorced. And that's when I went, whoa, what happened? And how am I going to learn from this? Because I never planned for this. And what just happened to me? And so there was a number of things that I was learning along the way, including this idea of paying attention to what I feel. And when I do that, how does it change what my decisions become? How do I weigh not only my values, my convictions, what's important to me, along with what I actually feel in my own body? And how does that then shape what choices I see in front of me and how I feel about those choices? And so that's sort of the key principle, which I then apply to relationships. So from there, I just kind of went on into the dating world, and I started noticing that I was repeating patterns of being with emotionally unavailable men and feeling the same thing with different people and saying, oh my goodness, okay, this is me here. What is happening that I'm feeling the same thing over and over? And I had to get that to stop. Hence, really leaning into what are these patterns? Where do they come from? So along the way, I also met a good friend of mine who identified as polyamorous. And up until then, I never met anybody who was poly. And what I so appreciated about him was the way he helped me get into this world that was so not familiar for me. And his experience around poly was, he said to me, I always knew, even from when I was very, very young, that I wasn't like everybody else, because I loved everybody and I didn't want I couldn't imagine myself with just one person, but this is what I was being told that I was supposed to be able to do, but I couldn't, and it just didn't feel right. And he knew that from very, very early on. And it kind of reminds me of, when we talk about sexuality or sexual orientation, how, some people say, I always knew that, but it wasn't okay for me to feel this way. Right. So
what year was this? I'm so curious. What year was this?
Yeah, this was, oh my goodness, probably 2013 or something like that. Yeah. And so the other thing that he shared with me is this term, which you're probably familiar with and talked about here, compersion, which was just this foreign thing. And it's this idea, if you don't know, for people that don't know, it's this, he would say, when with his multiple partners, it's like, I really love them so much, and I just want the best for them. I so want them to be happy and fulfilled and complete. And he felt that for all of his partners. And I was like, I don't know that I'm capable of that. Like, I just get jealous and right. But it was like this new concept of this, like, he's like, this is how big my love is, that's more important than, so many other things, that just this love for others and the care for others. So it just kind of opened up my world a little bit to these possibilities. So I think from there, I was working on myself, trying to change these patterns, which I was starting to be able to do, which was great. And that's a whole other story. But along the way, I decided, you know what, I'm going to explore this poly thing and see, can I be poly? Is that possible? And again, I want to notice, for me, my values, and people have different values here, which is okay to have different values. But my value was, it's okay to be open or poly, and I'm curious. So I'm going to allow that value, and I'll explore this. And so I did. And along the way, I learned, I don't think I'm poly. I don't feel that conversion. Like, I don't identify with that sort of loving everybody in that way. That's not me. And I'm struggling. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. I'm just going to accept this is just kind of who I am. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. I don't have to be poly. I don't have to love everybody. I don't. And so I said, okay, I'll rule that one out. I said, well, let me explore non-monogamy, because for me that was different.
How was that different
this
for
idea
you?
that Yeah. And I think, again, I'm not an expert in this, but for me, coming from hearing this friend who was poly, to me, the big thing about poly that kind of struck me was just this love and the compersion for all the
Yeah.
partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in my non-monogamy, I felt like I still loved, everybody and cared for everybody and so forth. But that desire and openness to want to um, love everybody. And I think I'll be able to explain a bit later when I explain a few other things. But for me, that was different than the idea of non-monogamy, where I'm getting different needs met by different people. And I don't have that sort of feeling of that compersion piece. I mean, to the same degree, I still love and care for each person individually.
Yeah.
But there is a qualitatively different sense in my own body that I couldn't resonate with this kind of poly idea. So I'll come back to that because I have a longer sort of explanation to make that
perfect. Because I'm fascinated by that. Okay.
Yeah. And again, it might just be semantics, right? But I define it differently anyway within myself. So
specifically how it feels in your body. So like you're talking about that emotional. Yeah. Okay. So keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. So I explored the non-monogamy thing. So I had, several different partners. And for me, the key thing, just like poly, is it's everybody knows everything. Right. I'm not talking non-monogamy, nobody knows. I'm talking everybody knows. It was different than poly. And I think maybe for me, again, defining things, none of my partners knew anything about each other except that they existed, right? No names, no anything, but they just simply knew, okay, there's other people out there. They knew when I would meet. And so it was all open, but no details about identity. And for me, it's really about consent, right? If you're not okay with this, we don't have to do this, right? So you're at choice if you want to connect with me in this way or not. And I think that's huge, because when I think about my history and my partner having an affair, the behavior is actually no different, right? My partner has somebody on the side, right? My partner has somebody on the side. It's no different, but it's the communication and the consent and the awareness that makes it feel good or not, right? If I don't know and it's actually not lined up with my values in our agreement, well, now I call it an affair or cheating or something.
Yeah.
But if I know about it, we talked about it, I agreed to it, these are the conditions that we communicate around it, it's just an open relationship, right? So
but God, the emotion that it travels from awareness to like hidden is so huge. My father had an affair, and like that was just like, and I wonder if they would have had this ability to, talk about it, which was never like, this is like in the 1980s, never like around our scope of life. But I just wonder, could we have traveled a different path? I believe everything is perfect, but really like from feeling like you were lied to and feeling like you were, that everything was out in the open, that's huge.
Yeah. I think it makes or breaks your experience in some ways, right? Yeah, absolutely. That sense of betrayal or safety, all of that really is what hurts or makes it okay in some ways. So, and a very important distinction. So yeah, I explored that, and for a number of reasons, a lot of it sort of external factors impacting me, made the choice to be sexually exclusive. But this is the non-categorical piece. It doesn't fit any defined conventional thing. So it was kind of, this friends with benefits is the closest conventional category. But it was also open in that we could have connections with others if we chose and communicated with each other. It was short term in that we decided we're not going to be married or stay together forever. But it was monogamous in that for the time being, we had, made a commitment. We will not engage sexually with others until we've actually had a conversation about doing that and agreed upon it. So it's, I'm pulling from all these different things, and that's what worked for us.
Yeah.
And so we that's what we had. And then on the side, I had this best friend, male, and I'm a heterosexual female. So I had this friend that, was best friend for 10 years. We would share our dating stories. He would have his girlfriends, I'd have my boyfriends, whatever. And we are really, really close. He's like a brother to me. And along the way, we kind of decided, you know what, we want to retire together. We can have, separate units in like a building. Maybe we'll have a few different units. We can invite other friends. We can have our partners. If we have a partner, they can come live with us too. But you and I, we are like family, and we're going to retire and grow old together. And so this is where I was like, okay, this is a whole other category. It's only recently, I'd say in the last few years, that I've actually seen it coined officially in some way as platonic life partner. Like, oh, other people are doing this too. It's not just me.
Yeah.
And I started to see articles about this where it's like, okay, two women out here in California, they've been best friends for life. They're not lesbian or anything, but they are going to grow old together and share their finances and live together. And they are platonic life partners, and they are the other person's person. Like, this is their life partner.
Yeah.
And it's not romantic, and it's okay.
Yes.
So it's these newer concepts, I guess, that are becoming more socially appropriate, I guess, in some way. We have a name for them. And again, I'm not against categories. They help us to organize.
Yes. Yeah.
But we got to be aware of the limitations of categories when they leave us feeling trapped or stuck or like we're wrong or abnormal if we don't fit them.
Yeah, I did this whole, I did an episode about labels. Maybe it was a part of another episode, but talking about that there are good things about categories or labels because, like you found out, oh, other people are doing platonic life partners. I don't feel so alone. At the same time, when it, when it puts all of these expectations on something needing to be a certain way and keeps you from really knowing yourself, right? And expressing yourself through your relationships, that's where it can become damaging.
Exactly.
And so I just I love this. This is the whole idea of relationship diversity, is really pulling these parts. And it feels like what you did was that you checked in with yourself. You got to know yourself first and felt in, and I want to go into the emotionally focused therapy because it sounds like you're really in tune with the emotions and how things feel in your body and in your energy system to guide, how you move forward in your relationship. So tell us more about emotionally focused therapy.
Yes. So emotionally focused therapy is a therapy model developed by a psychologist named Dr. Sue Johnson. There's lots of research out there, so feel free to do an internet search, lots of books, lots of scholarly articles. I think it's just brilliant. Thank you, Sue, for developing this model. And what it looks at, and again, I always apologize, like when I preface it, because I don't want to do it a disservice, right?
Sure.
If I explain it wrong. So, but if I kind of oversimplify it to this context of relationship diversity, for me, it was about, first of all, knowing what my values are. Okay. And values can change. You can change your mind about values, but having some awareness of what is actually important to me. And at this stage for me, I'm like, I think monogamy is actually important, right? And that's my value. I would like to be monogamous, to be clear on that. But then to also, and I think people have generally an easier time with values because this is a more cognitive thing, right? These are my convictions. This is what I want. They can be easier to access, not for everybody. Then the other piece is, well, how do I actually feel moment to moment? And I think where sometimes people have a hard time can be either accessing their emotions, or what do I do when I feel in a certain moment and it doesn't line up with my value, right? So for example, in my marriage, it would have been something like, I value marriage. I don't want a divorce, but I am so unhappy. But what do I do with that if I don't want a divorce? And this is where we often get stuck, right? Because we don't know what to do when the two conflict, right? Or for example, I'm really unhappy here. I don't want an open marriage, but I don't want a divorce, but then I don't know what to do, right? And so again, we want to notice, okay, what we do in that moment then changes our experience. Because if I'm miserable in this marriage, I don't want a divorce, but I don't know what to do, then the outcome is I feel stuck, I feel trapped, right? And I don't know what happens next, right? And so I might choose to stay, that's the option, but it's because I'm too scared to leave because, everybody's going to judge me or whatever, but I don't actually like my choice to stay. Okay.
Wow.
So even though I have two choices, I don't like either of them. Okay. So in my process of learning and, receiving therapy and this experiential model, what I started to be able to do was, okay, what are my values? What do I feel? But if I actually pay attention to these feelings without losing hold of my values, can my options actually change? Okay. So if I take the example of, being miserable in the marriage. Okay. I'm miserable in the marriage. I don't want a divorce, but I see two options, either, divorce or stay and be miserable. Okay. Not great. When I explore that miserable place in my therapy, what I might start to see is, okay, what's actually making me miserable? And I'll take the example with my ex. It's like, I don't feel respected. I feel like I'm always blamed. I feel like my emotions aren't okay. I'm not heard. So I'm always at fault. All right. Now, what have I done with that so far? Well, he doesn't really know any of this. He's always upset and angry and blaming me. I think it's my fault. So I go to therapy by myself. Okay. Well, he never actually knows what's happening for you, does he? What would it be like to actually start to turn to him and say, I'm incredibly lonely. I feel like it's always my fault. I don't know how to talk to you about any of this. Like, what would happen if we took all of that emotion, but we figured a way to communicate it effectively with our partner to give him the chance to actually respond to it? And most partners, if we approach them in a particular way, which is, in our vulnerability and our fears, if they love us, they actually, as a human, we feel compassion, we feel care. We don't want our partners to suffer. We want to help them be okay. We don't want them to feel blamed and awful, right? And so if we can, if as a couple therapist, if I can help that couple do that, now we've got a new option starting to emerge, because maybe now the partner's like, I don't want this to happen to you. I don't want a divorce either. What can we do differently? Right? And it could be a number of things from there, whether that means, doing some therapy, whether it means opening the relationship, whether it means actually getting a divorce. I mean, who knows? But now we might start to feel different about the choices too, when we're having a conversation about it. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is, for me, that was a big part of my journey, is what am I actually feeling and what do I do with that feeling? Because if I think I only have one choice, then yeah, it sucks.
Right. Oh, I love that. And I think, in that communication, the vulnerability, like feeling, making a choice, I think, like through long-term relationships. So I've been married for, 15 years, and there are these things that we just like, what's the word? Like these things that we just like start doing, and then it just becomes like, oh, this is just what we do, even if it's not unhealthy.
Right.
And it's about like stepping out. And I feel that whenever I can come to my husband, or I can talk to my clients about coming to the partnership with vulnerability, through, compassion for self, compassion with the relationship, honoring our own feelings, and communicating that there's like these big doors that open that create,
it changes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just it. We want, because I think when we can see all the options and that we could actually do any of them, then we feel different about the choices that we make. So, for example, I want to use this example because this comes up a lot as a therapist when I work with clients, and I could resonate with it too. If somebody comes in and they want to, okay, I'll make it personal for me. When my partner had the affair, I had to make the marriage work. I had to make him stay. Okay. And the thing is, I thought I was choosing to stay. But I wasn't actually, because I didn't in my body have the option to leave. The thought of leaving terrified me. I couldn't actually leave. Even though in my head, I know I could leave. My body said, hell no, there's no way you could leave. It's too scary. So I wasn't actually at choice to stay because leaving was not actually a real option for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was too scared. And it's the same thing with, I think we could kind of flip the tables when we look at, okay, if a couple comes in, do we open our relationship? Right. And it's like, are you at choice about it? Because it's really about choice, right? Are you at choice about opening it? Because to stay and do whatever you need to do to be in connection with your partner, have you actually met, if there's fear there, have you in your body sat with the fear of the intimacy and vulnerability of all the things that would come up if you have nowhere else to go but your partner? Have you actually sat with all of that and faced all of that? Or is it too scary, which is why you're going to go open the relationship? Right. And I'm not opposed to opening the relationship, but I want to know the function of opening.
Yeah.
Is it because you're avoiding the fear or because you felt all of the fear and you're both, from a centered, loving place saying, and this is the best option because we know we could do this, but we're choosing to do this instead. Likewise, for my own divorce, could I leave because I want to, because I know I could have stayed if I wanted to?
Right. And that fear keeps you in non-choice. It keeps you in reaction.
Exactly.
And opening up a relationship will never fix anything. Like if you're scared to feel emotions, opening up your relationship is going to bring more of that because there's so many emotions that come up in that process.
Yes.
So how do you? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that the word that has come up a lot, last few years, is this idea of emotional bypassing or spiritual bypassing. And that could happen in this context where you're right. If I never face that fear or the intimacy or whatever it is, the open relationship functions as a bypassing. I don't ever have to feel any of that. I could just go be happy with multiple partners. And if this partner doesn't work, okay, well, I'll just go find somebody else to feel happy. And then I just get to bypass anything that feels unpleasant or scary.
Yeah.
Right. And I justify it through the open relationship. And again, I want to be very clear. I'm not opposed to open relationships. I'm examining the function. Right. Same thing with affairs, right? Or like, what is the function of this behavior, not the behavior itself?
Yeah, that's imperative again, because it's like, are you going to be in your life? Are you going to be a life has uncomfortable moments, right? And we will always gravitate to the comfortable, to the familiar, even if it's painful, or like we'll always gravitate towards like, well, it's more comfortable to not communicate with my partner and then just go off and, forget about it and be with this other person. So, okay, we've identified the fear. So how do you lead your clients through, like, I've identified that I'm really scared about whatever it is. What do I do with that?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question because I think for most people, right, without the therapist, it would be, well, the only thing to do is go find out, right? Like, okay, I'm scared of opening it up. Okay, well, let's just go open it up because the only way I'm going to learn the fear is if we just feel it by exposing ourselves to the situation, right? Or whatever it is. And I kind of disagree with that. I mean, the principle behind it is correct because in doing the thing, you're right. You're going to face the fear now. But I guess what I want to propose is that's not the only way to face the fear. Okay. To just leave the relationship or whatever it is you're scared of. You don't actually have to do the thing. What you could do, the alternative is, and this, you have to do it with an experiential therapist, not a cognitive therapist, because a cognitive therapist, you're just going to talk about it, but you're not actually going to feel the fear.
Yes.
So in emotionally focused therapy, we guide you to feel the fear in your body. And most of the time, whatever that fear is based on, it's not just about the present moment experience. It's usually an old feeling that you had somewhere else at another time that you now feel in this moment. Okay. Most of the time, it's something like that. So we can access it without going and doing the thing. Okay. Because it's already in your body. So we have other ways in emotionally focused therapy to activate and access that emotion to help you feel it without actually having to go out into the world and change anything. will work with it in the moment to have your body go to that place of being scared and then help you discover the new options and actually try them with us in the room.
Ooh.
Now, this is all sort of, I could have a whole other conversation about what that looks like and how we do that. But that's where the transformation is, because if I could, in my therapy session, feel scared and find the other option and activate all those neurons in my brain so it's embodied, I can now leave therapy. And when that fear comes up, I've actually had a successful opportunity to engage in a different option.
Wow.
It's not just a theoretical. Often people are like, I know what I need to do, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're doing experiential therapy, it's going to stay that way, right? Because it's only in your head. So that's, for me, the power of emotions and emotionally focused therapy is we need to be in our body, not just in our brain, for any of this to make a difference.
It's so true, because I remember my mom always wanted me to go to therapy after my parents' divorce, which was just such a pivotal moment in my life, and I never wanted to. And then when my 20s, I went to this talk therapy. I remember it was on the Upper West Side, New York City, when I lived there. And I got so angry at that therapist because I just felt like I knew it wasn't accessing anything. And I was just talking about it, but I wasn't feeling any resolution in my body. And then after that, I started doing like more somatic based, real like body experiential therapy, which really helped as well. And which like started to shift it for me. And then I went into kind of like an energetic, like almost hypnotherapy type, which really got into all of those like places that I had forgotten about and everything. But I had to sit in my body. And you're right. Like when you feel, even in moments where I feel anxious, let's say about whatever, there's a million things to feel anxious about these days, and I like try to push it away. Like I try to push it away. It grabs hold even stronger. If I like say, I always talk about saying hello to it, feeling it, talking to it, really feeling it in my body and like breathing into it. And, that's just kind of how I do it on my own. It starts to just, let go a little bit, which is then creates a little bit more space for me to start to process it.
Exactly. That's the power of being in your body, is things actually move when you stay there long enough. And if you do certain things with it, I mean, just being in your body in and of itself isn't always the answer, especially if being in your body means pain and trauma. Okay, just revisiting that over and over is not helpful. But it's, if I go there, and maybe with a therapist, an experiential therapist, if I go there and we create a new experience, now, this is like you were saying, now the doors start to open, because I start to see, it doesn't have to end this way.
Right.
I actually can move to a new place and I could see more options now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. We have to trust that actually is possible.
Right. Because, the pain usually, like, just like you were saying, it's not even from this experience, probably in our current relationship. It's from something that happened that we weren't even super maybe conscious of how it settled into our body. Like for me, all of the decisions I made at 12 years old, from what I witnessed and saw from my parents, I mean, down to communication and fear of, arguing and fighting and what that meant, and all of these things that like just settled in my body without me really being aware of, that then contributed to all of my relationships after that. But me being so frozen when those things came up, like for me about arguing. The first time I saw my parents argue, they were getting divorced. Therefore, I made a conclusion that if I was arguing with a partner, we were going to break up. And so every time, every time like I would argue with them, I would feel such a space of like fear, like overwhelming fear, and be frozen. And I couldn't move out of that. And if I would have had this kind of therapy, I could have gone into it and really processed and started, feeling it and moving it. That's really amazing. So emotionally focused therapy, there are people all over the world who are doing that.
Yes.
Wow. Because you're in Canada, right?
I'm in Canada. Yeah. There's an international center for EFT, and there's directories for the different EFT therapist communities and centers worldwide, where we practice this model of therapy. Sue Johnson is here in Canada. She received recognition at the Order of Canada for her contribution in the field of psychology. So she's quite prominent. Again, a lot of research and evidence. It's, I think, among the different couple therapy models, it is the most effective evidence-based model of therapy for couples. And we use it as well with individuals. There's less research because it's we're gathering the research around individual work in it. But I'm just, as a client myself, I know the power of being in those emotions. I feel it in my own body and how I look at how I feel about my choices. Now, accessing those emotions, I think of it as my superpower, right? Like when I can actually feel my body and let myself feel, there is so much wisdom in there. Yes. Right. And when we can, like I was saying earlier, when we can integrate that, see how does that actually line up to my values, right? Because I think our values are just as important. But if I can't figure out how to integrate it, that's when I want to ask for some help, because I don't think it has to be an either or. It's usually just simply, I don't know what the option is, so let me ask somebody else because I can't see it, right? I don't think for the most part, I don't think we have to always choose that I'm either going to do the right thing or let myself feel. Sometimes we do. Okay. Sometimes we do make that choice, but if we find ourselves there consistently, there's probably something more happening here. If I can choose sometimes that I'm going to do the right thing and ignore what I feel, but it's a choice, that completely makes sense, right? I often use the example of, being a parent, right? Sometimes I'm really tired. I want a break and I want to go to bed, but I'm going to do the right thing and get up and breastfeed my child. Okay. That's my choice. And it's a legitimate choice. Yes. I want to choose to suppress my feelings to, sustain this newborn. So again, the behavior is not bad or wrong, right? The motivation's not bad or wrong, but is this my default? Is this what I always do? Or am I consciously deciding I'm going to do it now, but in another moment, I'm going to do what I feel and not, suppress that, right? It's really about, again, how I feel about my choices.
Well, I think the word you just used that I think this is all about is consciousness and awareness, is not being a victim to this kind of subconscious, or unconscious reaction, emotion, but really understanding more about it and then making the conscious choice from there. I love that. And I want to say that I just want to kind of put a note here because EFT is also known in the world as emotional freedom technique. It's not the same thing, you guys. It's not the same
that
thing.
Is not what we're talking about. Yeah.
Different. This is emotionally focused therapy. So I just want to point that out and make that clear. And then I want to talk a little bit about these. You have so many free resources to help people at your website, emotionalicu.com. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what people could find if they went there?
Yeah, so that website developed out of my own story and journey, which we touched on today, but there's a whole lot more pieces to it. And
you're writing a whole book about it, aren't you?
I am. Yeah.
There's a lot more to the story.
Yeah. But all the principles on that website apply to, how do we use these principles in deciding what kind of relationships that we want to have? And so what the resources there look at, how do I connect with my emotions? How do I identify my feelings and my values? How do I integrate all of that? How do I find choice and empowerment if I let myself feel? So that's all in the emotional ICU. What you learn there and what I'm trying to help you learn there applies to relationships, but it could apply to all kinds of things in life, not just the choices you make in your relationships or, it could, and when I say relationships, I mean, like, it could be with parents and kids and friends and all of those things, right? Not just a significant other kind of relationship. So that's sort of the emotionally focused therapy process is what I'm trying to give little tips and tools on that site. So there's some articles, there's some resources. I've got an Instagram account too, where I just give little, tidbits here and there. And then the book is really the story of my journey from two perspectives. One is as the client and what it's like to explore all of this. And the other side is the therapist kind of watching myself and naming what's happening for me. So, at the beginning of the book, I'm not aware. I'm ignoring all my feelings and I'm describing it as I experience it without awareness. And then at the same time, I have these kind of running text boxes where I'm noticing and I'm helping the reader understand what's happening to me and why I don't see what's happening. So I move back and forth between the two.
What a cool concept. And what is the name of your book?
I don't have a name for the print book yet. There is an ebook, which is kind of like a little excerpt before it got picked up as something to be published. So that ebook is called A Fairy Tales, and it's more about the infidelity piece. I actually lost my daughter at the same time, but that ebook is about more about the coping with the infidelity initially. And then the bigger book is going to capture sort of that full story, the infant loss at the same time as the infidelity and divorce, and sort of my whole process of recovery.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And when do you have a release date for the book? Do you know when that's
for the print? Not yet. We're still working on it. But if you go to my website, Emotional ICU, you sign up for the newsletter, we will keep you posted with the resources that are coming, including the print publication.
Okay, well, I'm going to sign up now because that book sounds like such a a journey that I love that idea of doing, of us experiencing it through you from both sides, from the client and the therapist. And how we can really learn, because I think that will apply to other people, even if our story is different. It will apply to, see, when I do this, that might mean something deeper and something that I really want to be looking at that could help me live, a better or, a more healed life. And I do believe that everything happens to us on our journey, on our evolutionary journey as a person, soul, spirit, however you want to look at it. But, and it's led you to this book, which is going to just help so many people, I feel. And this website, everyone go to emotionalicu.com and sign up for those free resources. And for her newsletter. And anything else you want to leave us with? Any thoughts of wisdom? I love everything we've talked about. I think it'll really help people. And one thing to go back to is this idea of, doing relationships in your own way, connecting with connecting your values to your emotions and understanding, from awareness, how to navigate between them from a conscious choice instead of like from a victim.
Yeah. I wish we had another 10 minutes because I realized also we didn't talk about
let's
a
do
couple
it.
other concepts, right?
Let's do it. We do.
And we can name them briefly, but as far as like parenting relationships, right? There's this thing, probably the last couple decades, maybe a concept called nesting, and more recently platonic co-parenting.
Okay.
And so these are non-conventional things again, right? When I was going through my divorce process, I was aware of nesting, which is the idea, again, the main value here for parents who choose to nest is I want my kids to have a stable home environment, and I will deal with my emotions and my connections and whatever in a different way. But my priority is my kids' environment. So what they do, financially, you need the resources to do this, but the kids stay in the matrimonial home. The parents rotate.
Oh.
So there's no disruption to the kids' lives, their schooling, everything is in one place. The parents either get separate apartments elsewhere or they have a shared apartment that they rotate in and out of, but they're the ones that go back and forth, not the kids.
Wow.
And they navigate how they're going to do that. Okay. So there's an option, right? You don't, and this one prioritizes the kids. And again, you need enough resources and so forth. You don't have to do this, but it's an option. The other one that has become more recognized, and I think in the last few years, is called platonic co-parenting. And everybody stays in the house. The kids and the parents. The parents navigate it by having, we are just friends or co-parents. That's it. We go out, we date, we do our own thing. We have our own rooms in the house. The intimacy and all of that is different, but we are still mom and dad. And that is the most important thing. And I will, navigate my social life and my dating out there, but we are still a family. And again, the value is we are a family, and that's the most important thing. I can go do dating and socializing apart from all of that, because this is the most important thing. So that's platonic co-parenting. And that's, again, a newer term that people are like, that's a thing now. We can do that.
Yeah. This is okay. I'm so in love with this conversation, because this is basically saying, like, who am I and what do I want in my life? What do I want my life to look like? I think that could be a really great option for someone who really wants to have a parent experience and has found someone that they want to do that co-parenting with, but don't necessarily want to be in, a more, a sexual relationship, an intimate relationship, but they really want to have that family together. That is a beautiful option. And I think the biggest takeaway from this is that do what works for you, but also and it takes courage to say, this is what I want in my life. This is what I want to experience. This is me. And I'm going to do it different than maybe what I've been told is the way I should do it, or the way I see on TV or in movies, or that my religion has told me, or my culture has told me. I'm just going to really hone in on what I want to do, and then design it in a way knowing that there are limitless possibilities. Because I can guarantee you, I know there are people out there who are listening who would never even thought about that idea of platonic co-parenting or nesting. I love that idea. I was pretty fortunate in my own experience that I lived with my mom. And so I never did go between different households, but I know a lot of kids now, my kids' friends, and, who do that, like going back and forth between households. And it's so disrupting.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not a bad option, but we want to be aware. Why do we do that? Well, because everybody does it. Are we actually asking ourselves if we want it to be different? Because if that's what we want, it's okay, do it. But if we've never actually questioned it or looked at, is there another way to do this that lines up with what I actually want for my family or my kids or myself, then, we're not really at choice. We're just doing it because that's the only thing we know.
Right.
Rather than we've consciously examined all the different possibilities before we decided which one is actually best for everybody.
Again, bringing that consciousness, right, and the awareness to our choices. And that is a big message in this podcast, is asking yourself, like, am I doing this because I want to? Am I doing this because this is just what I always thought I was supposed to be doing? So I love that awareness aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I said earlier, in these choices, sometimes we do end up making decisions we don't like. So for example, I wanted to do the nesting. My ex did not, and we didn't have the money. But at least I was aware of the options. And even though the choice I made would, to go with the flow and do what we needed to do, I didn't like it, and sometimes that happens, but it feels different when at least I know there are other possibilities and I attempted to navigate them.
Yeah.
Right? I tried to figure it out. Then it's a bit different than just feeling like it's the only thing I always got to do is go with the flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a big theme in current, is questioning everything in terms of diversity, with, that we are humans first and foremost, humans, and that we, just questioning I think everyone is questioning everything. Not everyone, but like there's so many people that are
a lot of questioning
in a lot of state of question. And I think COVID in the last 3 years, I guess it's been almost, has thrown everything up in the air for us to really have the space to question our lives. So although it's uncomfortable, I think it's such a great direction that we're moving in to be able to have conversations like we're having today. So I really thank you for doing your work in the world and for, speaking about all the things that you speak about in terms of diversity and just like designing, what works for you, and that there are options, and that there are times when you choose your values over your feelings. And there's times that you choose your feelings over your values, but that if we bring it to a state of consciousness, that is where we feel most empowered and less like a victim to our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's really it. How do we feel empowered? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I'm going to have all of your links in the show notes so people can connect with you and get all of those amazing resources that you're offering, and also sign up to be notified when your book is available. I can't wait to read that.
Yes. Please sign up for the newsletter. Please follow me on Instagram. All of that is going to help me get this book out there sooner, actually. If you let me know you want it, that's going to help me know, okay, I got to get this done. So yes.
Okay, please, awesome. So everyone go over there to, and they can get to that through emotionalicu.com.
Yes. So on the website, or if you're on Instagram, my handle is emotionalicu.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll all be following your journey. And again, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you wondering why you never seem to find lasting fulfillment in your relationships? Or do you create the same kinds of relationship experiences over and over again? Can you never seem to find even one person who you want to explore a relationship with? Have you just given up hope altogether? If this sounds like you, my recent book, Why Do They Always Break Up With Me, is the perfect place to start. The foundation of any relationship, whether intimate or not, is the relationship we have with ourselves. In the book, I lead you through 8 clear steps to start or continue your self-exploration journey. You'll learn about the importance of self-acceptance, gratitude, belief shifting, and forgiveness, and given exercises to experience these life-changing concepts. This is the process I use to shift my relationships from continual heartbreak to what they are now, fulfilling, soul-nourishing, compassionate, and loving. It is possible for you. This book can set you on a path to get there. Currently available through Amazon or through the link in the show notes.